So to kind of set the vibe,
Say,
Rania.
can you see
Oh.
by the dawn's early light? Oh, I'm sorry. Are we not doing that? I thought that's what you were supposed to do.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Wrong show.
Oops.
Wrong audience.
Oops.
Just doing my patriotism.
Patriotism. To set the vibe, we could either have Rania sing, or we could see a little clip of Trump speaking at the 250 celebration. Let's see what the vibes were earlier this week.
In 1776, our founding fathers met in Philadelphia and changed the world forever at the thing called the Declaration of Independence. Tonight, as we stand on the edge of our 250th year of independence, I am thrilled to declare that America is back. Our country is strong again, our country is wealthy again, and our country is safe again. America is once again a nation of self-respect, dignity, and pride. This is our heritage, this is our history, and this is the destiny of America to be the greatest, most incredible country ever to grace the earth.
Boom!
Ooh, so much
Rania,
Trump happening there.
What I have nothing else to say but your thoughts. What does this 250 years of freedom mean to you? Freedom.
Well, I like what he said, the thing called the Declaration of Independence. It's like such a Trump way of putting things. The thing we like to call. The exceptionalism is just ridiculous. Like, it's, all of the patriots are like, why can't you just let us celebrate our country? This is not a celebration. This is like a cultish level of fascistic exceptionalism. The best country, better than everybody else, the most amazing place, but also we're back because apparently we didn't have self-respect last year or 2 years ago before Donald Trump became president. I don't know where America went. Like, we're back. Like, from where? And as far as I can tell, America's still in every country in the world, except for still Cuba, but and Iran. But North Korea is still holding out.
We have a base on Cuba called Guantanamo Bay.
That's actually true. I'd even take that back. So I don't know where America's back from because they're still everywhere. But I mean, no, that's a great question. What does this 250 years of freedom mean to me? I mean, I just find that entire narrative to be really infuriating. I find it infuriating because this country was built on fascism. Like, we talk, people will say, yes, like some people will admit or concede like what we did to the Native Americans wasn't so nice. And
they'll say it exactly like that.
Yeah. It wasn't so nice. And slavery was not nice either. But who isn't flawed? That's the liberal argument is America with all its warts. You know what I mean? That's not a wart. That's fascism. Genocide of natives, settler colonialism mixed in with forced bondaged labor where you are literally breeding humans. Slavery you can't even describe it in words. What was enforced on people to literally work in chains so that rich white landowners could make a lot of money and live large, while literally people were in bondage, being forced to breed, and then having been being sold at auction shops, having their limbs chopped off if they dared to escape. That is fascism. This country was founded as a fascist country. And that is the true narrative. And I'm not saying that to make people feel bad, although you should feel bad about that. That's not and all of this American exceptionalism just covers that up. And it's so grotesque, especially as we see these people like Trump and MAGA, resurface. It's like that underlying current of American fascism that's always been there. It's always coming back. And that's not to let liberals off the hook, the liberal exceptionalists off the hook, because they're horrible too in a different way. But it just makes me angry. It makes me angry because you're not honest or serious about the history of your country. It would be one thing if you actually dealt with the history of your country, tried to rectify those, not mistakes. Those were not mistakes. Those were intentional depravities of fascism. They were on purpose. If you were to try to like actually learn about it, learn from it, fix the consequences of it, but no, there's just this ongoing denial, like well into 2 centuries after this settler colony was founded on stolen land and genociding people. So I just find it offensive. I find it all incredibly offensive. All the celebrations offensive because, and we're going to get to this. I know we're going to get to the things about this country that should be celebrated. Actually, there are beautiful things about American history that make me like the US, but not the narrative, the false narrative that these people perpetuate.
Yeah. Same. And
What about you? Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess like, especially, having just spoken to Jesse about the current injustices, and then just thinking again, as you said, like the country being founded on fascism, and then again, today we're seeing fascistic expressions, fascistic people in power. I wouldn't say we're living under fascism, but, the attempting desperately to kind of preserve this white supremacist rule. And it is like very on the nose that like Trump is president when this 250-year celebration is happening. In a lot of ways, it makes it clearer for a lot of people, like truly what does the U.S. represent, because he presents such a like chauvinist, imperialist, white supremacist vision of what the U.S. is. I think it kind of shows people that that's his vision is not what it is. But it is, it is pretty cringe, and we're gonna. Yeah.
I want to add something to that because you just made me think. I mean, you're absolutely right. Trump is the honest representation of what America actually stands for. Because the other reason I find that rhetoric so infuriating, and I find it really, it makes me almost angrier when it comes from like the Obama type, that sort of like liberal imperialist type, because they really like have a prettier face on this disgusting project that has so many people in the world living in misery.
Yeah.
Like to call 250 years of freedom for who?
Yeah.
Like all you do is enslave the world so that your tiny cabal of elites can continue to hoard more and more wealth. Like so many countries around the world cooed and plunged into catastrophe and chaos and war, and local fascists in various countries funded and armed to butcher anybody who tries to impose their own sovereignty or push for a project that is in the interest of their people rather than the interests of corporate America. I mean, decades and decades, 2 centuries of this bullshit. Even now in Lebanon, the U.S. is destroying Lebanon. The U.S. is funding and arming all of Israel's genocides. The U.S. is trying to start a war against China. The U.S. is literally suffocating to death the people of Cuba. The U.S. kidnapped the president of Venezuela after suffocating Venezuelans with sanctions for over a decade. The U.S. just launched a war of aggression, a war crime, unprovoked with the Israelis on Iran, plunging this region into chaos and more instability than it was already in. Where is the freedom? What freedom are you talking about? If you're talking about freedom inside the U.S., what I see is a sprawling network of for-profit detention centers holding people who aren't American because you want to deport them, including children, leading to their deaths sometimes. What I see is the biggest prison system in the world that imprisons more people than I think like any other country, maybe combined. I don't know. You can check me on that. What I see in the US is so much freaking poverty and financial instability. Like majority of people are one medical catastrophe away from like total financial ruin. People have like 2-3 jobs just to afford their ever increasing rents. Nobody can afford to buy a house. All of our money goes to war while like our healthcare is unaffordable. So people die because they can't afford healthcare. Like what freedom are you talking about? It's such a lie.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't have said it better myself. So let's go to our second question. what is, Rania, the biggest lie you learned about U.S. history growing up that you had to unlearn?
I mean, there were so many, because it's like the way you're taught American history is just a bunch of like misleading versions of history, blatant lies, lots of omissions. And I think for me, like the big eye openers that actually became my kind of like rabbit hole into like leftism, ultimately, were a book called Lies My Teacher Told Me. That had a lot of interesting like information about the actual history of not just like American like the genocide of Native Americans and slavery, but then also segregation, Jim Crow, the Reconstruction era. Like we didn't learn any of that correctly. The Civil War, we didn't learn any of that correctly. Like you learn a version of it, but there's a lot of omissions. Like sundown towns, we never learned about sundown towns. And also the way that all of that is still so consequential to how people today live, especially Black Americans. But everybody to some degree, right? But Black Americans especially, like just generation after generation, beaten down from slavery to like a prison system now that criminalizes all their boys and men. So I don't know. I don't think I can pick just one lie, but I think ultimately then I remember reading Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States. And that was my first entrance into understanding like labor history in the US and so a little bit of socialist history in the US. It's not like a huge deep dive, but it's a good like surface level introduction. And I think maybe that was what I felt so lied to about is like I was never taught like about, because I also thought history was so boring. It was just a bunch of white guys who seemed kind of like assholes, but I guess I'm supposed to like them, but they owned people. So it was all these contradictions. But never did I know there was like a history of socialism in the US and like people fighting and dying for like a 40-hour work week and weekends off and like all the things that we, you know, are slowly having taken away from us now. But the point is like Helen Keller was a socialist. That was like, you know, like these little facts here and there are like, holy shit, I didn't know Paul Robeson existed. He was an interesting character to learn about and totally erased from American history after he was like attacked by the national security state because he was a communist. Literally, it's like trying to erase Kim Kardashian today. He was like that level of famous at his time. So anyways, I guess that's for me, it's all those things. What about you, Zoe?
Well, I guess this is also kind of with our other question, which is what is the piece of history that kind of like most shifted your perspective about the U.S.? And I grew up, I think we both grew up in pretty progressive households. So I feel like both of us were kind of shielded from some of the more insane indoctrination. Like, I mean, we both laughed the other day about the Pledge of Allegiance. And I think I was sending you a voice note when I was passing by a school in Queens, which is like majority immigrant, you know, very working class families. And I heard people saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and I just had like a trauma flashback to like every single day in elementary school, in middle school, and in high school. For our international viewers who don't know, in the United States, in the public school system, you have to pledge your allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the Republic, all of that. You have
under God. You can do it under God.
Yeah, and you have to do that every single day. And so I think one of those things, so like I wasn't, and not to say that, of course, I didn't learn and stuff, but, and have my view shifted, of course, that's just like every day. But thankfully in my house, there was not many like, you know, my parents were telling me like there was genocide, there was slavery kind of thing. We weren't like, you know, and I'm very lucky for that. So I didn't have to like fully unlearn this like pretty idea of like how the US was founded. But I think similar to you, like one of the things that really shifted or like activated me in a way, and this is a question we talk about a lot, like what politicized you? Because I come from a socialist family, I was always really interested in like Cold War history. And so when I was in like 10th grade, I had to do a research project, and I wanted to do it about the Rosenbergs, because in my house, they had been like always spoken about as heroes, really. I come
tell
from
our audience who these people, in case they don't know, who are the Rosenbergs?
Yeah, so I come from a Jewish communist tradition in my home, and the Rosenbergs were a couple. They were very politically active. Julius Rosenberg was accused by the U.S. government of sharing nuclear secrets with the Soviet Union, and him and Ethel Rosenberg were imprisoned and put on trial. And it was like at the height of the Cold War. They were prosecuted by Roy Cohn, who's like, again, kind of like the McCarthy's, man. And it was like this brutal trial. There were, so many people across the world and in the United States who were opposing it because basically they were tried, convicted, and sentenced with the death penalty. And they were held in separate prisons. Ethel Rosenberg, was like guilty by association, essentially. They had 2 kids, and they were executed. They were executed in the electric chair and for, allegedly betraying the homeland. And so I wrote about this in 10th grade because I was like very interested in it, and like it kind of felt kind of not close to home, but like it was, part of my lineage in a way. And I was like, wow, like that is crazy. Like, I mean, I kind of feel bad because I'm like unable to like really articulate what it means, but like people for their political views, again, were like executed by this government, villainized. I stole a book from a friend that's like the letters between Ethel and Julius Rosenberg while in prison. It's definitely one of my favorite books, and it's really remarkable because these are 2 people who really believed in like fighting for social change in the United States, fighting for a better world, and all of what that meant. And they were, they were convicted and they were sentenced to death. And of course, I will just say, to not be an American exceptionalist, this is something that happens to people. It had already happened, of course, to many people in the United States, happens to people across the world. But because it was kind of like resonated with me in a weird way, just a personal way, it really kind of like woke me up in a way. Even though I kind of knew a lot of these things, I was like, wow, okay, there's both people fighting for a better world and a government that is hugely repressive and won't be afraid to send a message with the death penalty to other people. Like, don't cross that line.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare. Don't you dare.
There's an image I wanted to pull up from the White House has been kind of doing a viral campaign of
what does that top part say? I can't like see it properly.
It says
this is white out. Oh.
It says worth protecting. And
what is he? Is he protecting a tree? Like
it's the prayer at Valley Forge. So I think this is George Washington praying. George Washington, a slave owner.
Sure.
First president praying. This country is worth protecting, and I think interesting. The next video that we're gonna play, I think, is really funny because it ties into kind of both of our comments just about like learning about the socialist history of this country. So I wanna play it now so we can it can set us up for the further conversation. So let's see that clip.
It's not socialism, it's really communism. They use the word social democrat because it sounds so nice, but it's really communism you're talking about. I think it's the biggest threat to our nation there is, maybe since our founding. That includes World War I, World War II, September 11th. It includes the Pearl Harbor attack. I think this is the biggest threat to our nation. People will smile when I say that, but the smart people are going to say, he's probably right. It's basically introducing communism into the United States of America. There's never been anything so dangerous.
I mean, he is a capitalist, so I guess if you're a capitalist, you should feel threatened by anything to the left of you. That's really funny too, because I'm just kind of like, it shows like they really just collapsed the entire left on itself, because communists and social democrats would like argue with each other about being compared.
Yeah.
Insane.
And yeah, for context, this isn't necessarily about the America 250 celebrations. It's a response from Trump. Obviously, a lot of members of the Trump administration have been freaking out since the New York primaries, where Daria Lisa, Claire Valdez, who are from the DSA, beat the incumbents, AIPAC-backed candidates. And this is kind of the shockwave, but it's interesting that he says the biggest threat to the United States is like the possibility of socialism. And yeah, what I mean, he means there is the possibility of like working people in the United States actually maybe being, having their needs met, having economic freedom, and the country not being like a superpower across the world. But anyways, Rania, that brings me to the question, what can we celebrate today? Because I know, there's this kind of...
Wait, actually,
oh, yeah.
There's something I want to say. Sorry, no. There's something I want to say, like, with the previous question.
Yes.
In terms of, like, a history about the U.S. that,
yes,
like, really shocked me. Because this, I would say... because I have to stop thinking about the U.S. as just the U.S., because this is an empire that is imperialist that rules the world. And for me also, like, even growing up in the household I grew up with, which had like a very anti-imperialist mindset, especially when it came to the Middle East, because I came up like during 9/11, and I was just inundated with the stereotypes of like Arabs just being these religious fanatics and on and on and on, and like just like conservative and gross, and they all just want to like, cover you up and keep you in the house and no fun, nothing, no music, whatever. That's like the, and they speak a language and it's all the things about the Arabs, and just commit terrorism all the time. It was really like, I think, such a huge shift for me to learn about the leftist history that the U.S. destroyed in the Middle East, because there were popular communist and socialist movements and secular movements across the region, and the U.S. literally replaced them. They killed them off and armed and funded the right-wing, conservative, religious fanatics that they later said were terrorists that we had to fight a war against. And I think that was the most shocking to me, was to learn the roots of Al-Qaeda. That Al-Qaeda was formed from people who were a part of the Mujahideen in the 1980s in Afghanistan, that the U.S. funded to try to unseat the communist Soviet-backed government in Afghanistan that had been making really big forward strides in like things like mortality rates and things like reading, literacy rates. One of the first things that the highest paid Mujahideen members that the U.S. was funneling money and arms to in Afghanistan did was go to these rural schools in Afghanistan that the government had set up, had literally dispatched teachers to, which is typical of what communists and socialists do when they take over countries, is they expand access to schools, especially in rural areas. One of the first things those people that the U.S. armed did, the freedom fighters did, was attack those schools and behead the teachers. So like, this is, and then later, like 20 years later, then like there's a lot of reasons why Al-Qaeda formed, but it literally comes out of movements across the Middle East that the U.S. armed and funded to attack leftist leaders and organizations. And then 20 years later, 9/11 happens, and we're all supposed to just believe that the Middle East is this, Afghanistan, all these backwards places with just religious fanatics. So for me, it was really activating, not just to learn about the socialist history in the U.S., but the socialist history around the world that the U.S. empire has gone around killing and destroying. So sorry,
yeah.
I'm just rambling.
No.
Really important to me.
I'm glad you circle back to that, because it is true. And I think that is, for a lot of people, that resonates. And I think it brings up this fundamental question, Rania, which is like, how do you exist in the United States knowing all of this and then being able to like reconcile that? Because like, you're like, this country was founded on genocide, slavery, like fascism. It carries out all of those things across the world to this day. So like, how, because it's like, you still live here. Like we still, I mean, not you, you self-deported to Lebanon.
Quite a bit.
But you am there a lot.
Yeah.
And, it's like, how do you reconcile this question of like, okay, well, I live here. I don't want to hate the place I live. I don't want to be chauvinistic. I don't want to be, a nationalist or whatever. But like, how do you reconcile these things? And like, what is there to kind of celebrate today, I guess?
I mean, look, as an American, like we live in the belly, well, you live, and sometimes I'm in the belly of the beast. It is the center of like domination around the world. It's also a country of 350 million people. So that's a lot of people who are being immiserated by US empire because of imperial boomerang, and just because of how capitalism functions. So like, I take a lot of my like strength and motivation from the fact that there are growing numbers of people in the US who are organizing to make this a better, more equitable place, not just for the people living in it, but for everyone around the world. Because like revolutionary spirit and organizing in the US is important literally for the future of the world. Like it's not, as if it wasn't bad enough that like the US forces subjugates like the majority of the world to live in like absolute, misery and poverty to enrich like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. That's bad enough. They're literally destroying the planet with this system as this like imperial hegemon. So it's like incumbent upon us to be a part of fixing that in whatever way we can. And I think there's a history to be proud of in the US for people organizing. And that's what we don't learn about in history class. You don't learn about the movements that led to abolitionism. It just, Abraham Lincoln, just freed the slaves. It's like, that's not how it happened. Like there was a lot of abolitionist movement building and even slave revolts and even like lots of things happened to build to that moment. Lots of things happened to build to the rights of workers. Lots of things happened to end prior wars. And lots of things are happening now to hopefully upend this system, not because like we're all evil and just hate America, but because like this is the most powerful, destructive empire in the history of the world because of we live in 2026 and technological advancements and the weaponry and the sort of like, futuristic dystopia that's being created to basically subjugate everybody. But at the same time, if you're in the belly of the beast, you are higher up on the hierarchy. Like what you do, what people like us do makes a difference in helping to change the world. Not because we're better, but merely because if the US becomes a better, more equitable place that isn't about like constantly just parasiting off of everyone under capitalism, then it makes the world by default a better place.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I feel like, very similar to you. I think that the history that there is in this country, and it is really important that you said that, because when you learn about the abolition of slavery, it's like something that, people celebrate, at least in Boston,
Most people.
where I grew up.
Maybe not some people. Yeah. Where I grew up too, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I later learned that the way that there is a difference in what the narrative is, to say the least.
Yes, depending on like where you live. Yeah, apparently in some places. Yeah, Yeah.
And I would add, in my public high school, I had a class on Africa and the New World, which is basically about like the colonization of Africa and then the diaspora. So anyways.
Oh, wow. That's
I know,
impressive.
yeah. Go public school. But learning about the history of solidarity, of, organizing, of all of like the stories of how the rights we have today were won, those are the stories that I think can be celebrated and uplifted and are the really important ones, because that's how we kind of want to model for the future. I think it's important to give people something to hold on to, because if you just, because it is a painful history, it's a horrific, violent past, but there were the reason today actually is the day that the Civil Rights Act was signed into law by Lyndon B. Johnson, but he essentially had nothing to do with it because the only reason that the Civil Rights Act was enacted and the Voting Rights Act the following year was because of the Civil Rights Revolution and organizing and the bus boycotts and all of these things that saw people unite across historic lines of division that the U.S. ruling class has tried to instill in U.S. society to make it more manageable and as a capitalist state were overcome. And those are the moments that I think when people kind of feel lost and they see these extreme displays of chauvinism and just kind of this disgusting whitewashing of this history, that we should really grab onto because it's our history also. It's the history of the workers in the United States. It's a history of the oppressed people in the United States. And without that, I think it's hard to even kind of move forward because if we have nothing that we can really grasp onto, kind of like, what are we building? And that's the final thing I wanted to ask you, Rania, is what would a United States look like that either of us, both of us, could actually be proud of?
Ooh, that's like so easy. A United States that spends its wealth, not generated from parasiting off of the world, by the way, but that spends its wealth that is created by the people of the United States on giving people what they need to like survive in life, giving people the right to, and I'm being serious when I say this, housing, food, water, clean air. Giving people the right to free access to school, free access to medical care, and doing that by basically, you'd have to start by confiscating wealth from billionaires, which shouldn't exist because that wealth isn't even coming from them. It's being generated by people who work for them. So basically having socialism, having a socialist America that meets the needs of its people and builds a future that humanity can survive in and be happy in, where everyone's quality of life gets better, not based on whether they have generational family wealth, but just as existing as a human being who's able to be a part of a healthy member of society. And a United States that isn't destroying the world all the time, that doesn't have over 1,000 military bases around the world to make sure we can steal everyone's oil. And so we can fuel, the stocks of Nancy Pelosi and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. That's the kind of U.S. I would be proud of. And there's parts of the U.S. I am proud of because they are building towards those goals. What about you, Zoe?
Nothing to add. That's exactly, we are so aligned, Rania.
Wow.
Two brains.
Aligned.
No, but I agree with you. And I think we wanted to kind of give a little morsel of hope and of kind of let's talk about the truth, but let's also talk about what can we, it's going to be a lot this weekend. If you have pets, the pets will be scared. There's going to be a lot of fireworks. And there's going to be a lot of kind of disgusting comments from Trump. So I think it's important to kind of give people a bit of a grounding to be able to approach this weekend without losing your mind.